Hello class, my name is Perry Kennedy, and today I will be doing a presentation on interpersonal communication. I am a student at Liberty University, and this presentation is for my HSCO 508 class. Okay, so let's get started. Next slide. First, I will be going over the introduction. The introduction basically tells a little bit about interpersonal communication. So positive interpersonal communication is a form of communication that takes place when the people involved talk and listen in ways that take full advantage of the presence of the personal. Okay? So this may be a conversation between multiple people using skills developed through practice and repetition. This study addresses several positive and negative aspects, such as enlarging the conversation, behavior blends, potential barriers, internal noise, and external noise from a personal perspective, addressing Christian-based counseling processes. These are some of the things that we've been going over during our class. So the overarching goal is basically to improve interpersonal communication within the marriage and family setting so that I will be able to connect with others in a truthful and authentic way through reassuring them to rely on their judgment and beliefs. I will make every effort to be courteous and understanding, as well as attentive and observing. Whereas always remembering the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is a very important rule that we'll use at different times throughout our lives. You will always always treat others as you would have them, as you expect them to treat you. Okay, the next slide. Enlarging my conversation. The enlargement of the conversation will be an inclusive of summarization of the speech process from a more broad perspective to one which is more centralized and focused on the individual needs of the client, while upholding a direct and truthful communication to permit all partakers and active voice, further allowing the Word of God and His direction to guide the counseling apparatus to more healthy and positive outcomes. Next slide. Okay, so now we get to the background section, and this background section pretty much just kind of give some background details about my life so that you all be more familiar with me. So I am a 35-year-old Black American female. I was born and raised in a small town, Waycross, Georgia. I grew up in a nuclear family with two sisters, my mother and my father. And this pretty much had a lot to do with my personality, with being able to be raised in a home with both mom and with dad. I was able to pretty much have an advantage for having a father figure in my life. As well as my mom, to be able to guide me. They taught me very good morals. I have a Christianity background. We attended church often. We was raised in a Baptist church. I've been in church pretty much throughout my life. I have a 6-year-old son, and I am engaged to be married. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I obtained my bachelor's degree from Ashford University. And now I'm actually working on my master's degree at Liberty University in human service counseling with the emphasis in marriage and family therapy. I work with mental health clients and abused children. My full-time job is working with mental health clients. I work at Volunteers of America, and I am the site manager for both sites. I also work part-time with Infinite Possibility Counseling Service. I am a subcontractor, and I work with kids that children and families that has had different situations in their life, whether or not it was substance abuse or whether or not it was domestic violence. So I work with those kids as well. Next slide. Okay, so on our next slide, I'm pretty much going to discuss the background of positive and negatives. Okay, so my personal background of being raised in a traditional nuclear family involving one father and one mother gives me a clear perspective of the positive impacts that this family environment imparts to its members. Greater mental and emotional stability brought on by a more structured environment. An aspect of my background that presents itself as a negative is the situational birth of my son out of wedlock through myself and his father. Although myself and his father are now engaged in a long-term committed relationship, there are negative issues that will prevail, such as the name issue, that will have to be addressed once we are legally married. These aspects can be confusing to a young child. My son, he is actually going to the first grade, and sometimes he might question because mommy has a different last name from him, and so that brings up a concern for my child, and it raises questions. So it's a little bit different from the way I was brought up, because when I was brought up in our family, everybody pretty much had the same last name. Mom and dad was married, so it's a little bit different. So there are both positives and negatives as far as being in a family, whereas the traditional nuclear family where mom and dad is married, versus having a relationship and then having a child out of wedlock. Next slide. Okay, so this next slide is going to talk a little bit about behavior blend. Okay, so let's discuss. D is pretty much active and task, whereas I is active and people oriented. S is passive and task, and then C is passive and people oriented. So we're going to talk a little bit about my behavior blend. I would say that I'm pretty much the friendly type of person. Most people tell me that I'm easy to talk to. I have a very welcoming spirit. Saying that pretty much people feel more relaxed around me. They feel open to communicate their problems and their concerns. I get that a lot as far as my friends and with my family members, as well as in the occupational setting as well. Okay, so next, one of the other areas, and that would be under I, and then also I would say I'm pretty patient. That is a very important virtue for me. I actually feel that it's one of the most important virtues. It's being patient and pretty much waiting on God. That is one of my beliefs that I stand on. Anxious for nothing, but patient for everything. Another area that I would say that pretty much describes me as well as cautious, and that's under the compliance area. Cautious, I would say, because I am very cautious about the things that I do. I have a young son, as I stated before, and I want to be a good role model for him. So I'm very cautious about my actions and the things that I do. Next slide. So the next slide that I'm going to discuss, it talks about potential barriers. Okay, so we're going to first go over flat brain syndrome. And Peterson's theory addresses the impact of emotion on communication processes. It explains how our emotions, thinking, and relating abilities work, and how what goes on inside us comes out in the way we communicate. Self-conscious listening. Listening involving thought process, focusing on self over speaker. Some individuals focus too much attention on themselves by thinking, am I doing well or am I doing badly? Okay, so then next we have the biased listening. This is listening interpreted through a prism based on personal opinion. When we form an opinion about the level and value of what will be said. Okay, so this slide pretty much kind of went over potential barriers, like I said, the flat brain syndrome, self-conscious listening, and biased listening. Now we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so now our next slide discusses interpersonal noise pollution. Interpersonal noise involves several different elements that affect the ability to listen in a comprehensive manner. The mind wandering based on personal issues such as stress, which we all experience at different points in our life, work overload, grief, and even phobias can present as internal noise, complicating one's ability to carry on a productive conversation. Some of the solutions include taking control over past experiences, treating information in a positive manner, and implementing patience within the listening process. Okay? So we're going to move on from the internal noise pollution, and we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so this next slide is external noise pollution. External noise involves environmental interruptions to the conversation, such as loud noises, rapid speaker, multitasking, and exterior activities that consume the listener's attention. Okay, so solutions may involve seeking clarification of conveyances, finding a quieter place for discourse, and addressing one issue at a time. Okay? Next slide. Next is we're going to go over the action plan, and pretty much on this action plan it talks about seeking respectful communication processes, listening with intent and patience, directing focus outwardly, away from self, avoiding personal bias and unsupported opinion. The next is implementing effective and positive praise, implementing Peterson's talker listening card, meta-communicate process, addressing faith-based values and attitudes, seeking better understanding. The next slide. This is the next slide discusses the action plan being continued. Recognizing non-productive behavior patterns, maintaining an open mind that respects the opinion of others, addressing conflict management in ways that promote a peaceful and calm environment, and that's always a very important tool. Recognizing the value of self-disclosure, implementing the 3 aspects of empathetic listening processes. Empathetic listening requires 3 skill sets, and that's focusing, encouraging, and reflecting. Implement listening as a whole found and mindful approach. Mindful listening requires you to see, hear, and feel your whole being. The next slide. And this pretty much just kind of wraps up everything. And this is my reference page. And it gives all of the different references where the information came from throughout the presentation. This ends my presentation on interpersonal communication. I would like to thank my audience for listening, and I hope that you now have a better understanding of interpersonal communication. Thank you.